let's talk about this Buchardt Sub10 subwoofer and how it compares with the KEF KC62 subwoofer. Now in part two of my Sub10 subwoofer review. Once again, my rating for these two subs are, I give the KEF KC62 sub 9.5 out of 10. Two things I am deducting some points from perfection is the KEF KC62 does not have an app. And until I messed around with this Buchardt Sub10 that does have an app, I really didn't miss the KEF not having an app. Wasn't thinking about wanting an app, but once I had one, the KEF KC62 that had an app, it would be better. The second thing that I deduct points from the KEF KC62 is it has a ton of Class D power in it, but I can't use all of that power. The volume available when I crank up really past 50% on the volume knob in the back of the KC62 sub, when I crank that extra headroom power on the volume, it breaks the sonic illusion that all of the bass is coming from the LS50 metas. And for me, that's super important. A properly integrated subwoofer creates this beautiful sonic illusion that all of that wonderful bass that the subwoofer is actually generating, it sonically appears to be coming from the stereo speakers. And there's a point where there's plenty of volume, but as I crank it up, it breaks the sonic illusion, and your eyes are drawn to the corner and you look at the KF62 sub because it's clear that's where the bass is being generated from. So those are the 2 points that I deduct off of my score for the KEF KC62 sub and why I give it a 9.5. My score for the Buchardt Sub10 is a 9.8 out of 10. Yes, if I had to choose only one, I would keep the Buchardt Sub10. Two things that I'm deducting points off of the Buchardt is its aesthetics. Its looks are okay, but just okay. It's good enough. It's handsome. I like that the woofer is off center and it's a thin rectangular, but it's good enough. But it's not as aesthetically appealing and attractive as the KEF KC62 sub, which I think just has a great design language. And the second point that I'm deducting some points for off of the Sub10 is, while I really enjoyed the app does not have a volume control capability from within the app. And I really wish it did, because I so much enjoyed and have learned so much about blending the bass properly with 3 different sets of speakers by sitting at the listening position with the app and adjusting the low pass filter and how much bass was being created by the subwoofer, the Sub10, and the high pass filter, and what the impact was if I raised the high pass filter so the speaker might only be generating 60 hertz and above or 50 hertz and above, and what impact that had on its capability to create music, or bringing it all the way down. So I enjoyed playing around with that. But as I did that, it required making adjustments in the volume level of how much power the bass was creating. So for instance, you drop you send more of the bass coming from the sub and you have the volume way up, you need to adjust things. And it's not the end of the world, just like it wasn't with the KEF KC62. It's not the end of the world that I have to go change the volume on the knob in the back, or change in the KC62, change the low pass filter with the knob in the back. It wasn't the end of the world, but it would just be way better if I could sit in the listening position with the app and adjust both the volume and the low pass and high pass filter settings. So that's my only other deduction that I have made in my score for the Buchardt Sub10. Now, I want to dig in more on what the real listening experience was like in A/B contrasting the KEF KC62 sub and the Buchardt Sub10. So the best metaphor I've come up with for bass is I have a sweet tooth. I admit it. Now, I drink my coffee black, but with sweetener. Now, for me, say when I get a 20-ounce Americano, for me, there is a perfect amount of sweetener. And the analogy here is sweetener is bass blended in your music as opposed to sweetener into your coffee. So when my sweetener is one packet short on a 20-ounce Americano, and when my sweetener is one packet over from perfect, it still tastes great to me. So I hope you're following me with this. On a 20-ounce Americano, I can adjust the sweetener packets in 3 different, there's a perfect number of sweetener packets that this is what I usually do. If it's one less, it's not the perfect level, but my Americano tastes great. And I can do one extra packet and it still really tastes great. But if you do 2 extra packets or more than that, it ruins the coffee for me. It no longer becomes coffee, it becomes candy. And I don't like that. So for me, the truth be told, that one extra packet is really what I would always do, that little extra sweetener, if I wasn't trying to limit the sugar, because I know it's a guilty pleasure and the sugar is not really healthy for me, right? So sugar was, if sugar was good for me, I think my perfect sweetener for my coffee would be with that one extra packet. But sugar's not healthy for me. Now, bass to my music is like sugar to my coffee, except, you know what? Bass isn't bad for me. It's not bad for my health. There is no guilt to the pleasure. So bringing this back to bass and subwoofers, especially in this case, blending subwoofer and more bass into 2-channel stereo audio. When it comes to the 3 sets of speakers in my living room, which all 3, in my opinion, do not require a subwoofer. And quick reminder, I was using my Sonus Faber Lumina 5 tower speakers, my Zoo Audio bass model of the DW6, Dirty Weekend 6, and I still have here the Buchardt P300 stand mount speakers, and I had those set up in the living room also. So these 3, none of them, in my opinion, require a subwoofer. They produce stated bass extension reach, 38 hertz for the P300, 37 hertz bass extension for the Sonus Faber, and down to 30 hertz for the Zoo Dirty Weekend. This, to me, is going back to the metaphor sweetener in the coffee, like my 20-ounce Americano sweetened with one less sugar packet than perfect. My Americano tastes great. I love it. I'm perfectly happy. I can do that all day, every day. It's all that is needed. But adding one more sugar packet or two more sugar packets aren't going to ruin my coffee. It'll only make it taste even better. Remember, there's a health consequence from that sugar that I want to avoid. So, side note, in the same way that too much sugar can turn coffee into candy and ruin it, as I mentioned just a second ago, and it makes me not want to drink that coffee. If you oversweet my Americano, I'm not going to finish it. In the same way, too much bass that becomes muddy or boomy will ruin the music for me and make me not want to listen to it. So the analogy really holds, I think, very close parallel. Now, because bass is not bad for my health and that the way more sugar is, what I found is I added the Buchardt Sub10 into each of these three pairs of speakers in my living room that, yes, they sound better with more properly integrated bass in the room. And the speakers that I love, they were just better with the subwoofer properly integrated. Do they need that added bass? No, they don't. Does the added bass make a difference and improve the sound and the listening experience? Yeah, 100%. 100%. Now, staying for a second with this sweet tooth metaphor, speakers with a bass reach that extends down to 35 to 40 hertz, that equals my coffee with one packet of sweetener less than perfect. Speakers with bass reach that extends down to 30 to 35 hertz equals my coffee with what I would put into my 20-ounce Americano as the perfect sweetening level. I love it because sugar's bad for you. And a properly integrated subwoofer, like I was able to get from this Buchardt Sub10, with any stand mount or floor standing speakers, any, regardless of their bass reach, like the Zoo Dirty Weekends that extend down to 30 hertz. That equals my coffee, my Americano, as a guilty pleasure with that one extra packet of sweetener. And it's awesome and a bit decadent. And adding a subwoofer that creates boomy, muddy, distorted bass, that equals my coffee with too much sweetener, and it ruins my coffee and it turns it into candy, and I'm not interested anymore. It's no longer the coffee that I love. And too much bass, for me, can ruin the music that I love. But the properly integrated subwoofer makes the music that I love decadent, just like that little extra sweetener in my coffee. Are you with me on this? This is my scale for bass in my hi-fi system. So using this metaphor, and after my listening evaluation, I now have a new recommendation to anyone who is considering upgrading your speakers. If you do not currently have a subwoofer in your system with your stereo pair of speakers and you're thinking about upgrading, spend that upgrade money on a really good subwoofer, like this Buchardt Sub10, like the KEF KC62 sub, or on any other sub that is smooth and easy to properly integrate into your room and your speakers. You will hear a significant upgrade in the sound to your hi-fi system. For example, specifically, the song, and I want you to know that down in the description, I have listed a long list of bass test tracks that I use. And they have links to titles so you can listen to them. And both of these that I'm going to discuss right now have links in the description. So McNown has a great breakup song called A Lot More Free. And it's a great breakup song with, you can hear the emotion in his voice, and he plays this soulful harmonica that sort of encapsulates some of the pain that he's feeling. But this song, and it's not what you would think of as a bass test track. It's not a dance song. It doesn't have electronica. It doesn't have driving bass. But I challenge you, play this song without a subwoofer, and then play this song AB with a subwoofer. And with a subwoofer, the bass resonance from the acoustic guitar is crazy. And it adds a weight that increases the way I feel his pain in this song. It really adds to the emotional pain that is in this song. It's a breakup song. It's about pain and suffering from love loss and recovering from that. And playing it with a subwoofer, it had more weight to it. Next song, Darius Rucker and Dax, the song To Be a Man. This is a song filled with emotion and frustration and maybe indignation. Maybe that's the best word, because I don't think it's pain that it's being expressed. But as with A Lot More Free, when played with a subwoofer that carries all the way down to 20 hertz, this generates an emotional weight to this song that supports and reinforces the lyrics and the emotion that's contained in their voices and in the lyrics. Now, this is a duet, and it's a rather quiet song driven by vocals, but the emotional impact to the listener when played with a subwoofer that's properly integrated into your stereo pair of speakers is much different. It's much stronger. The emotion is felt more strongly by the listener, in my opinion. So, FYI, I added a lot of links in the description below to test tracks that I want you to have an opportunity to, explore, listen, and you will hear what I was hearing when I was testing the KEF KC62 and the Buchardt Sub10 and integrating them into a stereo pair. Now, in order for me to describe to you my comparison, ultimately, of the KEF KC62 sub and this Buchardt Sub10, I need to tell you a relevant story. After I graduated from college, I spent a year and a half bartending in Washington, D.C., Georgetown actually, working at a great high-volume place called Houston's on Wisconsin Avenue, just below the busy corner of M Street in Georgetown, D.C. We were right next door and we were right next door to one of the great jazz clubs, certainly in America, and perhaps even broader than that, called Blues Alley. They actually refer to themselves as a jazz supper club, which I think is a nod to the history of jazz dinner clubs in New York City during the height of the jazz culture and popularity. Blues Alley has been there since 1965, and numerous live jazz albums have been recorded there, including Wynton Marsalis' album Live at Blues Alley. And I'll put a link to that whole album and title down in the description now that I think of it. So, being adjacent with Blues Alley, Houston shared a back alley with our respected trash dumpsters. And if you've ever been to DC in the summertime, it's mostly hot and humid all the time from Memorial Day through Labor Day. So Blues Alley would usually have their door to the shared back alley open with a bouncer standing there trying to allow some of the heat and humidity out and allow some fresh air in. So during my year and a half that I bartended at Houston's, the other bartenders smoked, but I didn't. And since they would go take a smoke break out back, since I didn't smoke on long, busy nights, I would take a 5 to 10 minute break when it was my turn, and I'd go out to the shared alley and I'd go stand with the bouncer at the open door of Blues Alley and get a listen to who was playing, and just the music and the vibe and the feel from those hot, late, busy nights when I would just be, stealing a peek and a listen of the music coming from Blues Alley. I just loved it. And of course, over that period of time, I saw several concerts there when I wasn't working. But the reason I tell you this story is because it was really a formative experience for me as an audiophile, because Blues Alley became my standard that I was looking to recreate at my home in my listening room. I don't know if you have a standard that you're trying to recreate when you are listening to your favorite music at home in your listening room, but I do. Does that make sense? The experience shaped my listening room target goal to be what it is today. I want my listening room to sound like Blues Alley does. Sound like I am in a live jazz club, and make me believe that I am in a live jazz club when I'm playing the jazz that I love at home here in my listening rooms. That's my target. That's what I'm going for. And I have successfully achieved this goal with my KEF KC62 subwoofer, 100%. I told you in part one, the KEF KC62 sub has been my first truly successful attempt with a subwoofer to integrate more bass, all the bass that I wanted, into my stereo speakers and into my listening room. However, on the KC62 sub, when I turned the sub volume up too much, and I mentioned this and why I dinged it slightly, you start to look over in the corner and you look at the sub and you're aware that the bass is coming from the KC62 sub rather than from the LS50 Meta speakers. And that breaks the sonic illusion of all the wonderful bass coming from my stereo speakers. In other words, the integration in the stereo speakers is lost at this point. And this happens before the bass volume reaches the level where you feel the bass thumping in your chest, before the bass is really a vibration much more than a musical note, such as in hard driving nightclub dance, EDM and dubstep and hip hop. When bass is a musical note, I get all of that from the KEF KC62 sub, but I can't crank the bass up to where you're just feeling the bass. Do you know what I mean? Where it's hitting you. And this is what separated the Buchardt Sub10. The Buchardt Sub10 separated itself from the KC62 sub in that I can turn the bass volume on this all the way up. Now, I ended up leaving it at about 3 p.m. on the knob most of the time, but I could turn it to 100% on the back here without any muddiness, any boominess, without any distortion. And I don't know how on this Buchardt Sub10 that I was able to position it anywhere I wanted in the room. And I did in so many different positions, 4 different positions in here, 2 different positions in my living room, and crank it all the way up and never get boominess, muddiness, or distortion. I don't know how it's able to do that, but that was my experience. That I can turn up the bass and the volume on this amazing subwoofer, and somehow I just keep getting more bass that's still tight, that's still accurate, with no distortion and no boominess and no muddiness, and without making the listener perceive the bass to be coming from the Sub10. It maintained this vital sonic illusion that the stereo speakers are producing all of this amazing quantity of bass that's hitting you in the chest. And I don't understand how the Sub10 is pulling this off. I really don't. But I can only report to you that in my listening evaluations, it does. Now, what this means is that with the sub 10, I now have two options for my target listening goal that I can achieve with the Buchardt Sub 10. Number one is my beloved Blues Alley Live Jazz Club recreation in my listening room. I would leave the volume knob at 3 p.m., maybe 2 p.m., and that gave me what I was getting with the KC62 sub, my live Blues Alley Jazz Club experience. You know, I have to have that. That's my minimum. If you can't get me that, I'm going to keep looking for gear until I get that. But with the Buchardt Sub 10, now I have a second option. Now I can turn the bass volume up beyond that and even up to 100% and recreate the sound and the feel of a modern dance club with all that volume and feel and impact that you experience when the bass is just driving at a dance club without any distortion, without any boominess, without any muddiness. This is a new experience for me to be able to now with the Sub 10 recreate the sound experience in my home, in my listening room of a dance club. It's amazing. And as I said, I don't understand how the Sub 10 is pulling it off, but it does. And look, I want to spend a lot more time relaxing at my Blues Alley like Jazz Club. That's my primary listening experience. But we have, every year we have a New Year's Eve party. We have, occasional parties and friends over, birthday parties. And now I can crank the heck, crank it to 11 on the Buchardt Sub 10. This thing should be called the Sub 11. And when we're having a party and we're dancing, I can make our living room feel, not just sound, but feel like a dance club. It's new. That's what this has brought to my party. So now I have both experiences, jazz club or dance club that I can choose from. Super cool. So this concludes my part 2 of my take on this wonderful Buchardt Sub 10. As has been very clear, I'm a fan. I want to say thank you very much for watching. My goal is to help you reach and enjoy your happy place. And most definitely, please come back to this channel. And thanks again for watching. And I will see you again on the next video. Cheers.